All right, everyone, get ready for this. We're diving deep into Glovo today. Glovo, you might recognize those yellow backpacks zipping around. You sent in some really interesting stuff about them. And get this, one source is actually their Wikipedia page in Spanish.
Oh, yeah. That's a great place to start. I was looking at that too, and you know what I noticed? Even the way they talk about the company there feels different, like from the English Wikipedia page. It's almost like Glovo, they have like a different image depending on where you are in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. We'll have to keep an eye out for that as we go through all this.
Definitely. I think what we're going to find is a story of like super fast growth, but also there's like a lot of controversy around Glovo. It'll be interesting to see how those two sides work together.
For sure, for sure. So just to give everyone a little background, Glovo, they got started in 2014 in Barcelona. And within 5 years, by 2019, they were already in 26 countries and over 200 cities. That's moving fast.
Yeah, and a lot of that was fueled by venture capital, which is kind of the story with a lot of these tech startups these days, right? But what's interesting here, I think, is that Glovo wasn't actually making money during a lot of this expansion.
Right. So the venture capital firms, they were just pouring money in, hoping that Glovo would like dominate the delivery market someday. It was like a big gamble.
A huge gamble. And the sources we've got, they suggest that this kind of growth, as impressive as it is, it raises some questions, like about how sustainable it really is.
Right. Like, can they keep this up?
Yeah.
And what's it going to cost? Right.
Exactly.
Speaking of costs, remember back in 2020? Pandemic chaos. Well, in the middle of all that, Glovo decided to sell off their Latin American operations to a company called Delivery Hero. And they're a German company. And they already owned a majority stake in Pedidosia.
Right. Another delivery service.
Right, exactly.
That was a big move, and it really shows just how much consolidation is happening in the food delivery industry. These companies are all like fighting for market share.
Yeah, it's like survival of the fittest, but delivered to your door.
Yeah, exactly.
But, all this talk about growth and mergers, sometimes it can make us forget about the people, you know? Like, what about the workers, the writers, as Glovo calls them?
Yeah, that's where things get a little more complicated and a little more concerning too. Glovo depends a lot on independent contractors, which has caused some issues in a lot of countries, especially Spain.
Yeah, one of the articles we've got, it actually uses this phrase, false self-employment, to describe how Glovo works.
That's a pretty strong term.
It is, right? What does that even mean?
Well, it comes down to like control. Are these riders really, independent, like setting their own hours and making their own decisions? Or are they actually more like employees, just
Right.
without the benefits and protections?
And what do the Spanish labor inspectors think?
It seems like they're leaning towards that second view.
So how do they figure that out? What makes it false self-employment?
It's a bit of a legal gray area, to be honest. But some of the things they look at are like how much control the company has over the workers, whether the work they do is like really central to the company's business, and if those workers rely on the company like financially.
In Glovo's case.
Well, there are some red flags. You've got the algorithms that decide who gets what deliveries, all the strict rules that writers have to follow.
And they don't really have much power to like negotiate or anything like that.
Exactly. So they're kind of stuck in the middle, not quite employees, but not really freelancers either.
And that has real consequences. Like, remember what happened in Barcelona in 2019?
Yeah, with the writer who was killed.
Yeah, he was hit by a truck. It showed how dangerous these jobs can be. And, there were protests after that, people demanding better conditions for riders.
It makes you think.
It does. And it seems like things are starting to change, at least legally. I'm thinking about that court case in Palermo back in June 2023.
Yeah.
Glovo, they were ordered to, like, show everyone how their algorithm works, how it decides who gets what delivery.
Yeah, that was a huge case. And it brings up this whole idea of algorithm transparency, which I think is super important. Algorithms are used everywhere these days, not just for deliveries, but for things like hiring, loans, all sorts of stuff. But when it comes to the gig economy, they're basically deciding like who gets to work, how much money they make, their livelihood.
It's almost like the algorithm is their boss, making these big decisions about people's lives, but no one knows how it works.
Exactly. And that's why the Palermo case is so important. It sets a precedent for holding these platforms accountable. These algorithms, they can have biases built into them. They can be discriminatory. We need to be able to see what's going on.
So, I mean, what would that actually look like? Like, would riders be able to just see like the code of the algorithm or something?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, imagine if you could see why you were assigned a certain delivery, how the algorithm figured out how long it would take, how it factored in your rating, all of that. It would be a game changer.
It would be like pulling back the curtain,
Mm-hmm.
giving workers a way to understand and to fight back if they're being treated unfairly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just happening in Italy. I was reading about another case in Barcelona. This one was in 2024.
Oh, right. Yeah, the one where they called Glovo's CEO in for questioning about like labor violations.
Yeah, exactly. So the pressure is on.
It seems like this whole debate about the gig economy is evolving. It's not just about like classifying workers anymore. It's about the role of technology in like shaping how people work.
Totally. And let's not forget, Glovo's not just about food delivery anymore. They're trying to become like this one-stop shop for everything you need delivered on demand.
You're talking about when they bought Lola Market in 2021, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Lola Market. They're a platform that lets you order groceries from all the big supermarkets in Spain. It's a sign that Glovo wants to branch out, get a piece of that growing online grocery market.
So it's not just about like burgers and pizza anymore, huh?
Nope. They're thinking bigger, more like anything you want from groceries to, I don't know, cleaning supplies all through their app.
Like the Amazon of on-demand delivery, I guess.
Yeah.
Catering to like our need for everything now.
You got it. But with this kind of expansion, there are other concerns that come up, like think about data privacy and security.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right. Like that huge data breach they had back in 2021, right?
Yeah, that was a big one. 480 gigabytes of personal data just leaked out there. Names, addresses, phone numbers, even payment info. It ended up for sale on the dark web.
And not just once, twice.
I know.
It happened again in 2022.
Makes you think twice about putting your credit card info online, doesn't it?
For sure. It just shows how vulnerable our information is, especially with companies like Glovo collecting so much data about us.
It's something to think about. And with data protection laws getting stricter, companies like Glovo, they're under more and more pressure to keep that information safe.
Totally. I mean, these data breaches, they can have huge consequences, not just for the company, but for all the people whose information gets out there.
You're absolutely right.
So, wow, we've already covered so much ground with Glovo. It's a company on the move, but there's like this whole other side to it, the controversies, the algorithms, that data breach. It all paints a pretty complicated picture, doesn't it?
It does. And, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore. Like in the next part, we're going to dive into what it's actually like to use Glovo, both as a customer and as a writer. What's the user experience really like?
Yeah, the good, the bad, and maybe the ugly. We'll see.
Exactly. And then we'll step back and look at the bigger picture. What does Glovo's story tell us about the future of work, technology, and society? Stay tuned.
Welcome back.
It's really striking, this thing about Glovo. They're so focused on growing, growing, growing. But it seems like all that growth comes with some serious, like, ethical and legal baggage,
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? Like maybe all that pressure to scale up, all that venture capital money we talked about, maybe it pushes companies to make decisions that aren't always, putting people first.
Right. Remember we were talking about that Spanish Wikipedia page? It goes into a lot of detail about the criticisms of Glovo's worker classification system. And it really highlights like how vulnerable these writers are. They're kind of stuck in this gig economy limbo.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that sometimes. Like when you're just using the app, it's so convenient. A few taps and bam, food at your door. But behind all that, there are real people dealing with some really tough stuff.
No doubt. And the algorithms that make all this on-demand stuff possible, they play a big role in all of this. Like, remember that court case in Palermo where Glovo had to reveal how their algorithm decides who gets what delivery? That case really showed, like, how much power these algorithms have.
It's almost like the algorithm is the manager, making these decisions that have huge consequences for the writers, but it's all like hidden behind code.
Exactly. No one knows how it works. And that's why this whole push for algorithmic transparency is so important. If we want to protect workers and make sure things are fair, we got to be able to see how these systems are making decisions.
So what are some of the like specific risks here? What's the worst that could happen with these hidden algorithms?
Well, one big concern is bias. Algorithms, they learn from data, right? But if that data is already biased, then the algorithm is going to be biased too.
So like if the algorithm is, I don't know, prioritizing writers who consistently get high ratings, it might end up favoring those who work in wealthier areas, where people are more likely to tip well and give good reviews.
Exactly. And then that creates this feedback loop, right? Riders in poorer areas, they get fewer opportunities, make less money, and have a harder time improving their ratings. It's like the algorithm is just reinforcing existing inequalities.
That's kind of scary to think about, you know? Like, this algorithm that's supposed to be objective and fair is actually making things worse for some people.
It is. And another issue is, like, what happens if you think the algorithm has treated you unfairly?
Hmm.
Say you got assigned a really long delivery or a really difficult one. It's almost impossible to challenge that decision.
Because you're, like, arguing with a computer.
Basically, yeah. There's no human to talk to, no one to appeal to. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
And it's not just the riders who are affected by this, right? Customers are in the dark, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, have you ever noticed your favorite restaurant just disappears from the app? Or the delivery fee is different for no apparent reason? That's often the algorithm at work, making decisions we don't understand.
So we're all kind of like at the mercy of these algorithms. Whether you're a rider or a customer, they're making decisions that affect our lives, but we have no idea how they work.
That's the problem, right? This dependence on algorithms and the lack of transparency. It raises some fundamental questions about power and fairness in this whole digital age.
All right, so we've talked about the ethics, the legal stuff, the problems with algorithms, but what about the actual experience of using Glovo? What's it like for the people who use it, the customers and the riders?
Well, from a customer's point of view, Glovo is really easy to use. You open the app, you see a map, you pick a restaurant or a store, place your order, track it, and then your food or groceries show up.
It's all about speed and convenience.
Exactly. But even though the app might be sleek and easy, the reality on the ground can be a bit different. I mean, you've probably heard those stories about deliveries gone wrong, orders getting lost, food arriving cold, or riders getting frustrated with the app's navigation.
Yeah, totally. And those problems, I mean, they could be super annoying for both sides, the customer and the rider.
Oh, for sure.
No one wants to wait an hour for cold pizza or get lost because the GPS is messed up.
It just goes to show that even when technology is supposed to make things easier, it can sometimes make them more complicated. And often it's the riders who end up dealing with the consequences.
Right. They're the ones out there dealing with traffic, interacting with customers, handling all the unexpected stuff that happens. And I imagine the pressure to be fast, keep your rating high, compete with other riders, it's got to be stressful.
Definitely. There's a human cost to all this, this need for everything to be faster and more efficient. And we got to remember that those riders, they're the ones making this whole system work.
It's like they're the engine that keeps this whole machine running. But sometimes it feels like their well-being is kind of overlooked in this pursuit of like instant gratification.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it brings up this bigger question, how do we balance the convenience of on-demand services with the potential downsides for the workers and for the environment too?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And it's something we're going to keep exploring as we go deeper into Glovo's story. What does it all mean for the future of work, for technology, for society as a whole? Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. All right, so we've gone deep into Glovo, haven't we? Their crazy fast growth, all the controversy around how they treat their workers, the power of those algorithms, and even some good and bad user experiences. But now let's zoom out a bit. Let's think big picture.
Yeah, good idea. It's time to ask, what does Glovo's story tell us about the future? About the future of work, technology, society, all of that.
Okay, so futurist hats on. What kind of insights are we getting from all this?
Well, one thing that's really clear to me is just how fast technology can change everything. Glovo, just it appeared out of nowhere, right? And then boom, it changed the way we live in cities, the way we interact with them.
I mean, it's true, right? It wasn't that long ago that ordering groceries through an app and having them show up at your door in minutes, it felt like, I don't know, something out of a movie. Now it's just normal.
Exactly. And that kind of rapid, it has ripple effects, right? Especially when it comes to jobs. We've talked about the gig economy, but that's just one piece of it. Automation, artificial intelligence, all these online platforms, it's all changing what work even means.
So are the robots coming for our jobs? Should we all be freaking out?
Not quite. I mean, yeah, some jobs are going to disappear for sure. Machines can do some things better than we can, but new jobs will pop up too. The key is being able to adapt, learning new skills, keeping up with things.
So we're all becoming entrepreneurs in a way, huh? Always hustling, always learning new things.
Yeah, there's something to that. The lines are getting blurry between traditional jobs and freelancing. We're all becoming more independent, more reliant on technology, and more like in charge of our own careers.
It's exciting, but also kind of scary, right? It's like we're sailing into uncharted waters here.
Totally uncharted. And that's why it's so important to think critically about all this, to question assumptions, to challenge the way things are, to demand more transparency and accountability from these companies, from these technologies that are like shaping our lives.
So it's not about just sitting back and letting the future happen to us. We have a say in this,
Right.
right? Like those activists who are fighting for Glovo riders to have better working conditions.
Exactly. We're not just consumers, we're citizens. And we have a responsibility to speak up, to shape the future we want.
It's like what we were talking about before with the algorithms, right?
Yeah.
We need more transparency, not just from Glovo, but from all these tech companies.
Mm.
They have so much power now, we need to be able to see how they're using it.
Absolutely. We can't just blindly trust them, right? We need rules, we need oversight, we need to hold them accountable.
It can feel like the Wild West out there sometimes. With all this new technology, we need some, I don't know, some guardrails to make sure that all this innovation doesn't end up hurting people.
And those guardrails, they have to be built by everyone. Policymakers, tech companies, workers, everyday people. It's complicated for sure, but it's something we have to figure out.
Well, that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Asking tough questions, looking at things from different angles, and sometimes, we end up with more questions than answers.
That's the best part.
It is, it is. So as we wrap up our Glovo deep dive, let's leave everyone with one final thought-provoking question. What kind of future do you want?
That's a big one, but a good one. As we've seen with Glovo, technology can be incredibly powerful. It can change our lives in amazing ways, but it can also cause real problems. It's up to all of us to decide what kind of world we want and to work towards making that happen.
Absolutely. And just because our deep dive is over, that doesn't mean the conversation has to stop. Keep thinking about these questions. Keep learning. Keep pushing for a better future. Thanks for listening, everybody.